Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. My name is Tim Harris, pastor at Woodburn Baptist Church. It is the rainiest day ever in Woodburn, Kentucky, which is where I am, which is where I pastor the Woodburn Baptist Church. Love you guys so much. We go verse by verse, Monday through Friday, just for some time in the Word together, and I appreciate your faithfulness more than I could ever say. We're in Genesis chapter 30, verses 1 to 24. This morning. I'm just not about to try to explain women and fertility and pregnancy and what all this means in the hearts of the women in this story. It's complicated, but I know some of you get it. Some of you who are women who follow me perhaps have dealt with infertility or pregnancy issues as Rachel and Leah do in this part of the story. My wife Casey and I, we struggled with fertility, primarily miscarriage, for a number of years. So I know something about that crisis, that ongoing crisis. I can relate as a man. I can never understand this kind of thing, though, from a woman's perspective. When Rachel speaks in verse 1, and again, just understand, as I think we've talked about, the first words that somebody speaks in Scripture are often really important. Now, you would think that we've already heard from Rachel, right? Because she's probably been in the story now for 10 years or so. But these are actually the first words that she speaks, the first recorded words in the Bible, and her first words are, give me sons or I'll die. Notice that it's not, I want a baby. It's, I want sons, plural, not one, multiple sons. I'm going to die. I will die if I don't have sons. Again, that kind of desperation is something that I would say most men, we can't relate to that. But for Rachel, this is an existential crisis, a crisis of identity. It's a physical crisis, and in the end, it's a crisis in every single way for her, spiritual, emotional, and physical. I don't know. I just know that as elementary school kids, you play the whole game. Tim and Casey sitting in a tree, Kissing. First comes love, second comes marriage, then comes, Wade and a baby carriage. I mean, that's what we think. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes babies. And you don't question that, You just assume that, you're going to get married, you're going to have babies. And then there are instances when it doesn't happen that way. It happened for Leah. She's had 4, but now Rachel sees that she can't have any children. And it's a devastating thing for her. Now, especially in the ancient world, when a woman didn't work, a woman had very little worth apart from providing sons. And so the fact that Rachel has no babies, has no sons, is for her a terrible crisis. So she comes into Jacob and complains, give me sons or I'll die. And Jacob says, am I God? Do I look like God? Why does she come at him like that? I assume he's doing his part, and I remind you, we talked last time about his possible age. I think you said it's probably 77, something like that. So this dude's pushing 80, give him a break, but I think he's doing his part. But remember how Abraham prayed, and it reversed the infertility for Sarah, and remember when Isaac prays and then, Rebecca has twins, and maybe Rachel's coming out from that perspective, dude, as if, would you pray? Would you do something? I got to have sons. But again, Jacob is portrayed, especially in this passage, as particularly passive, man. I mean, he does what he's told. He gets in whatever bed he's supposed to get in that night, and he doesn't really seem particularly faithful or full of faith or anything else. He just sort of does what he's told. Am I God? Why are you complaining to me? Am I God? Again, notice how this whole passage begins with when Rachel saw, because in verse, I think it's 9, when Leah saw, so you get this rivalry between these sisters, and that for me is the part, maybe some of you women could explain this better. Not that every woman understands every other woman, but so much of this seems to be between the women and for the women. I guess there's a way in which men will have a place with other men, and you want to impress other men, but so much of this is played out in the community of women. Notice how, at the end of chapter 8, once Rachel just gives her servant Bilhah off, to Jacob, and she says, my servant will have children on my knees. That's what it says. So she'll bear children on my knees. Some people think that maybe there was an ancient, ritual where when Bilhah would go into labor, she would literally lay back on Rachel's knees. And so it's almost like, if you close your eyes and pretend, it's like the baby's coming out of her. But no, because the same phrase can be used of men, had the son on his knees. I think it's more the idea, whether it's literally a ceremony where when the baby's born, it's placed right in the lap of the woman who's going to adopt. So it's not so much I had the baby on my knees, literally I had it in my lap, but the baby's placed in the lap instantly, and that formalizes the adoption. So Rachel, just like Sarah with Hagar, Rachel offers Bilhah her maidservant, and Jacob goes to town, and ends up having children with this maidservant. They're officially Rachel's. They'll always be known as Rachel's, but they're not her biological children, and she knows that they didn't come from her, and she still wants children. She wants to have sons, But again, I struggle hard with my sister, and I'm winning. Verse 9, I'm winning. It's like, okay, Leah 4, Rachel 2. It's like they're keeping score. And then later, when Leah has Asher, she says, now all the other women are going to celebrate with me. It's like, there's something here. This is about the women. It's between the women, and it's about something about how I'll be seen in the eyes of other women, or how other women will look at me, or what position I'll have in the community of women. I'm not saying any of this is godly, and just because the Bible reports it doesn't mean the Bible supports it. Any of this, not the multiple wives, none of this. The Bible's just reporting, not supporting. But at any rate, then verse 9, Leah sees, so now Leah gets back into it. Leah realizes she ain't having babies either. Now there's an allusion to that after Judah was born back in chapter 29. It says after that she stopped having children. I have a hard time, with just that simple idea that God is just actively opening and closing wombs. A part of that is because we've struggled. We would have loved to have had more children. And I just have a hard time seeing God up there, saying, okay, no babies for you. And then, the dumb high school girl, gets pregnant, first time she has sex on the prom night, boom. I don't know. I just have a hard time, with that. So I don't necessarily believe, that God, curses you and you can't have children. But I do believe that God can do all things. And in this instance, again, these are the patriarchs of Israel. This is, the birth of a nation. And so I believe that you're supposed to understand that God is in control here. God is, in control here, because these are the sons of Jacob, right? And so then Leah sees she can't have children, so she offers her maidservant Zilpah, and it's just this desperation and people taking into their own hands, what is literally God's work. And I think that's the tension here, that ultimately God is in control here. Now, there's a really interesting story about when Reuben, who's probably 6 years old about now, he finds some mandrakes. Understand, mandrakes are only mentioned here and in the Song of Solomon. If that tells you anything, I think it's chapter 7, verse 13. Mandrakes are considered an aphrodisiac in the Mediterranean, in the ancient world. And they were considered like a fertility. You could infuse them in vinegar or oil and make yourself a fertility potion, And so Leah's son Reuben brings his mama some mandrakes, and Rachel loses her mind. Give me some of your mandrakes. Again, it's superstition. It's like, man, that's gonna cure my fertility. That's like, natural Viagra or whatever, it would be. And so they make this deal, where Leah hands over some of the mandrakes if Rachel will give her Jacob. It's like, Rachel's in control. It's like she pimps out Jacob for the night. I don't understand that. Like Rachel seems to have control over who and where he sleeps, and who he sleeps with. But at any rate, Leah buys him for the night, with some man. I mean, that's what she says. I bought you. You're mine tonight, and so anyway. Notice that Rachel gets the mandrakes, but she's not the one that has a baby that night. It's Leah. And so Leah has more children. She has a daughter named Dinah. And then the story ends the way it begins. Verse 22, we're back to Rachel, who, although she offered her servant, she hasn't had biological children yet until God remembers her plight. Again, so it wasn't a mandrakes. It wasn't a servant, man. If you just wait on God, God does what God will do, and God does it in his timing. At the very end of the story, Rachel has a son, and his name is Joseph. And you know that. It's going to be one of Jacob's favorites, of course, because it's the son of Rachel, his favorite wife, whatever that's supposed to mean. And then notice how it ends up. At the end, verse 24, she names him Joseph, and then what's the next thing she says? I want more. I want more. She names this one Joseph, and then she says, I want more. May God add me even another son. I want more. Remember, from the beginning, she wanted sons, not son. And remember what she said, if I don't have sons, I'll die. Now you know the story, kind of a flash forward here. She will have another son, but she's going to die in childbirth. So in a sense, there's sort of that foreshadowing when she says, give me sons or I'll die. She is going to have sons too, but she will die trying. And that indeed is the story of Rachel. Not yet, but that's what is going to happen down the road. We'll pick up here tomorrow, chapter 30, verses 25 to 43, I think, 43. Jacob and Laban are going to match wits here, and the story continues. It's good stuff, you all. Stay in the Word, stay dry today, and stay faithful. I'll see you in the morning, Lord willing, at 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I've talked a million miles a minute. Do I do that all the time? I'm sorry. I get excited, and I know it's 10 minutes. So anyway, and I'm over time. I love you all. I'll see you in the morning.